Hi guys and welcome back to Laws of the Game, the bite-sized vlog that explores contemporary sports law issues. Back in May 2020, we discussed the proposed £300 million takeover of Newcastle United by a Saudi-backed sovereign wealth fund in the context of the Premier League's owners and directors test. Now the takeover ultimately collapsed after the Premier League concluded that the consortium was controlled by the Saudi government. As part of this, the Premier League said that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would be a director for the purposes of the Premier League rules. Newcastle disputed this conclusion and also challenged the lawfulness of the Premier League's process. Okay, so what's happened since then? In September 2020, Newcastle referred the dispute to arbitration in accordance with Section X of the Premier League rules. Under these rules, arbitrations are heard by 3 arbitrators. Each side picks an arbitrator, and then these arbitrators appoint a chair. Now, each side did this. Newcastle appointed Lord Neuberger, the Premier League appointed Lord Dyson, and together, Lord Dyson and Lord Neuberger appointed Michael Belloff QC as the chair. Now, after his appointment, Newcastle found out that the chairperson had previously advised the Premier League in the years prior to his appointment, including in relation to potential changes to the owners and directors test, and had been involved in a number of arbitrations involving the Premier League solicitors. Now, this information had not been disclosed by the chairperson prior to his appointment. Newcastle then sought to challenge the appointment under Section 24 of the Arbitration Act. Section 24 of the Arbitration Act gives a court the ability to remove an arbitrator on various grounds, including where circumstances exist that give rise to justifiable doubts as to his impartiality, which in substance includes where there's apparent bias. In January this year, Newcastle's application was heard before the court, and in March, the judgment was released. Wait a second, how do you decide whether someone's biased? The test that applies to apparent bias is an objective one, whether the fair-minded and informed observer, having considered the facts, would conclude that there is a real possibility that the tribunal was biased. In basic terms, the court has to ask, based on all the evidence before it, whether there's a real as opposed to a fanciful possibility of bias. Right, so what did the court decide? The court ultimately found that there was no real possibility of bias. Whilst the chairperson had previously advised the Premier League, this was in relation to the actual application of the owners and directors test under Section F of the Premier League rules, and not the definition of director for the purposes of Section A of the Premier League rules. Second, whilst the chairperson had been involved in a number of arbitrations involving the Premier League solicitors, this was fairly common and did not compromise his independence. Now, sports law is a small world, and often you come across the same people over and over again. This is particularly true in sports arbitrations, when the number of arbitrators you can select is limited. This isn't the first challenge to an arbitrator's appointment on the basis of bias, and it certainly won't be the last. Earlier this year, the Swiss Supreme Court annulled an award of the Court of Arbitration for Sport in relation to Chinese international swimmer Sun Yang. This was on the ground that there were justifiable doubts as to the impartiality of the arbitrator. In this case, the arbitrator had posted a number of unacceptable tweets, including racial slurs against Chinese nationals. Now, we won't repeat them here because you can read them online. Here you could clearly see that there were justifiable doubts as to the impartiality of the arbitrator. But anyway, back to Newcastle. So what happens next? Now we're waiting for the substantive hearing of Newcastle's arbitration challenge against the Premier League, which relates to whether the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is a director for the purposes of the Premier League rules. Once this has been decided, the Premier League can then determine whether the proposed directors passed their owners and directors test. If you'd like to know more about how this test works, please check out my previous vlog. Now, Newcastle have issued a statement indicating their desire for the arbitration to be heard speedily and in a transparent manner. Will the takeover go ahead? We'll have to wait and see. If you've enjoyed today's vlog, please do click like and subscribe. And until next time, I've been Sports Law Tom, and this is Laws of the Game.